Hey guys. Tonight, we ease into an ancient world where mountains whisper, rivers remember, and the stars still carry grudges. The air smells like olive groves and smoke from temples. You're not in Kansas anymore. You're in a universe before time had manners, where gods are moody, mortals are doomed, and logic hasn't been invented yet. Welcome to Greek mythology, where chaos reigns. Nothing makes sense. And everyone's family tree is basically a love triangle. You step into the void. And no, not a philosophical one, an actual void. There's nothing here. No wind, no sky, no tick-tock, just chaos. In all its capital letter glory. The Greeks weren't shy about beginnings. They figured the universe kicked off, not with precision or blueprints, but with raw, churning chows. Think cosmic soup, but make it existential. From this swirling mess, out pops Gaia, the earth herself. No, she doesn't climb out like a woman in a mud mask. She is the land. Solid ground emerges beneath your feet as she forms, a shape you feel more than see. She stretches across the void. And as soon as she exists, she's lonely. Fair enough. So she gives birth to Uranus. The sky. He covers her completely. And yes, this is both metaphorical and disturbingly literal. They fall into something like love or codependency and begin having kids. Lots of kids. Their children are the Titans, huge elemental beings with names like Oceanus, Rhea, Hyperion, and Mnemosyne, the goddess of memory, who honestly should have kept better records of what happened next. But here's where it gets awkward. Uranus turns out to be, well, a Yerk. Instead of celebrating his terrifyingly large and powerful offspring, he shoves some of them back into Gaia, deep into her womb. This is not metaphor anymore. It's just traumatic geology. Gaia, understandably, is furious. So she crafts a sickle sharp and shining and asks her children for help. Only Cronus, the youngest Titan, volunteers. Classic, younger sibling energy. He ambushes Uranus during a romantic moment, and, well, let's just say the sickle is used very effectively. Cronus hurls Uranus's severed bits into the sea. And from the resulting sea foam, voila, Aphrodite is born. Yes, the goddess of love comes from cosmic trauma and floating sky guts. Greek mythology doesn't dissuplo. Now, the Titans are in charge. Cronus takes the throne. He marries his sister Rhea, as one does in divine families, and starts having children. But Cronus is now paranoid. Why? Because his dad predicted he'd be overthrown by one of his kids. And we all know how prophecies go in these stories. They always come true. Usually in the most dramatic way possible. So every time Rhea gives birth, Cronus swallows the baby whole. No bib, no seasoning, just straight down the hatch. Hestia, Hera, Poseidon, Hades all gulp down like divine vitamins. Rhea is not okay. When she's pregnant with her 6th child, she decides she's had enough. She gives birth in secret, hides the baby in a cave on the island of Crete, and wraps a rock in swaddling cloth. Cronus, none the wiser, and clearly never checks his meals, swallows the rock. That hidden baby little Zeus, this kid is destined for godhood and plot twists. Raised by nymphs and fed on goat milk, Greek mythology loves a good goat. He grows strong, clever, and suspiciously good at revenge. You can almost hear the sitcom theme song. Meanwhile, the world's still a mess. The Titans rule, but the earth is groaning under old grudges. The sky doesn't speak. The seas are restless. And deep down, Gaia is watching, still powerful, still waiting for her great-grandson to do something wild. You're just trying to make sense of it all, while standing on a world born of vengeance and anxiety. There's no Google Maps here. Just vibes. Fringe tidbit. Some obscure myths claimed chaos had sound before form, so the first thing ever wasn't a shape, but a roar, or possibly a lullaby. Depending on who's translating, historians still argue whether the Greek idea of chaos was meant to reflect fear of disorder or reverence for infinite possibility. Either way, it sets the tone before anything beautiful or noble can exist. Something deeply weird has to happen. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love knowing where these bedtime stories find you. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't get to take a breath before the next round of divine dysfunction begins. Zeus, safely tucked away in his mountain nursery and raised on honey and goat milk, grows into a god with perfect abs, terrible patience, and a burning desire to unseat his father. Classic, back on Olympus, or technically, not Olympus yet. That's still under construction. Cronus is ruling with a big scowl and a belly full of regrets, mostly in the form of his 5 divine children and 1 decorative rock. His paranoia is thriving. Every sneeze gives him anxiety. Every thunderclap makes him wince. And that little voice in the back of his immortal brain, yep, it's whispering Zeus is coming. Zeus grows up, finds out the family history, a cheerful bedtime story. Really, son? Your siblings were devoured before dessert. And hatches a plan. Step 1, get inside Cronus's household. Step 2, make Dad hurl. Literally, with help from Metis, a clever Titaness who specializes in wisdom and high-stakes trickery. Zeus brews a special potion, a divine ipecac. If you will, he slips it into Cronus's drink. And moments later, there's a celestial vomit fest. Out come Zeus's full-grown siblings Hestia, Hera, Demeter, Hades, and Poseidon, slimy but alive and very ready for vengeance. Reunited and thoroughly undigested, the 6 siblings declare war. What follows is the Titanomachy, a 10-year divine battle so chaotic it makes modern family reunions look tame. Zeus and his siblings team up with the Cyclopes and the Hecatoncheires, those 100-handed, 50-headed giants Cronus had also locked up, because apparently he hates anyone who can clap impressively. These monstrous allies are unleashed from Tartarus, and they immediately start hurling mountains like dodgeballs. Zeus gets a special weapon, lightning, gifted by the Cyclopes, who were always oddly great at forging dramatic accessories. Poseidon claims the sea. Hades gets a helmet that makes him invisible, which is perfect for a sneak attack, and, for introverts in general, the battle shakes the earth, cracks the sky, and boils the oceans. Finally, Zeus and his siblings triumph. Cronus and the rest of the Titans are overthrown and imprisoned in the pit of Tartarus, guarded by the Hecatoncheires, who are finally having a great time. Now, with the Titans chained and groaning in the underworld, the new gods take over, and they do what all victorious factions do. They start arguing about real estate. Zeus draws the sky. Poseidon claims the sea. Hades, drawing the short straw, gets the underworld. Demeter takes the harvest. Hera gets marriage and endless drama. And Hestia keeps the hearth warm and tries not to get involved. And, just like that, Mount Olympus becomes the divine penthouse. It's high, snowy, exclusive, and mostly symbolic, since gods could appear wherever they wanted. But Olympus becomes a vibe all marble. Clouds and family feuds echoing down the halls. Fringe tidbit. Some lesser-known myths say that Titanomachy cracked the very structure of time. As if 10 years of battle didn't just pass, it changed how time worked, creating day and night, seasons, and even sleep. Time, apparently, needed a reboot after so much God-on-God drama. Historians still argue whether the Titanomachy was an allegory for a real cultural shift in ancient Greece, perhaps symbolizing older Earth religions being replaced by more sky-oriented patriarchal systems. Others just think it was a good way to explain why we have thunder and earthquakes. You wander the halls of Olympus, where no one locks their doors, but everyone hides their secrets. The gods are young, powerful, and, let's be honest, kind of emotionally unstable. It's like living in a divine high school, where everyone has superpowers and unresolved trauma. Zeus, now king of gods, is feeling pretty good about himself. He's got a throne made of storm clouds, a scepter that crackles ominously, and absolutely zero chill. And while he technically leads a divine democracy, let's just say consensus isn't really his style. You settle into a cozy corner of Olympus, where the floor hums with static and the walls occasionally whisper someone's future. Lightning flickers on the ceiling, like mood lighting. You lean back, staring at the myth-soaked sky, knowing the real drama is just beginning. Because now that the Olympians are in charge, you've stepped into the golden age of gods, and they're just as messy as the Titans. So, here we are. The Titans have been shoved into Tartarus. Zeus is king of the universe, and Mount Olympus is practically shimmering with divine confidence. The war's over. The drinks are flowing, and you'd think peace would finally settle over the cosmos. Yeah, no. Because now we enter the golden age of divine pettiness, where paranoia and prophecy continue to ruin everyone's good time. And right at the center of this Cronus's spiritual air, in both Thunderbolt and Insecurity Zeus, see, after overthrowing his father for swallowing his siblings, you'd think Zeus would not repeat the whole child-devouring routine. But prophecy, as always in Greek mythology, just loves a good plot twist. Zeus learns that he too is destined to be overthrown by one of his children. The irony hits harder than a thunderclap. So, what does he do? He marries Metis, the clever Titaness, who helped him poison Cronus. And when she becomes pregnant with his child, he panics, but instead of swallowing the baby like his dad, Zeus takes it a step further and swallows Metis herself. Yep, whole, while she's pregnant. Let that sink in. Apparently, this was supposed to prevent the prophecy. Spoiler, it doesn't. Sometime later, Zeus starts getting the worst headache in history. He stumbles around Olympus, clutching his skull, moaning like someone who's just read the fine print on a timeshare contract. None of the gods know what to do. Until someone, possibly Hephaestus, possibly Prometheus, steps forward with a bold suggestion: let's crack Zeus's head open. Because, obviously, that's what you do. A hammer comes down. Out springs Athena, fully grown, fully armored, and deeply unimpressed. The goddess of wisdom is born straight from her father's skull, skipping childhood entirely, and instantly becoming everyone's favorite no-nonsense war strategist. Athena becomes a symbol of balance, wisdom, and war. Logic and power. Diplomacy and spear-throwing. She favors mortals who use their minds and routinely saves heroes from themselves. Also, she invents the olive tree, which feels like overachieving. Meanwhile, Zeus keeps adding names to his divine dating roster. His relationships with goddesses, nymphs, and the occasional disguised mortal are, let's say, frequent. Hera, his sister and queen, is not thrilled. Their marriage is the stuff of legendary soap operas, endless betrayal, divine tantrums, passiva-aggressiva rainstorms. Hera's jealousy becomes iconic. She can't always punish Zeus, so she goes after his lovers and their children with ruthless creativity. One poor woman, Semele, gets tricked into asking Zeus to reveal his true form. He does, and she's vaporized. Hera once turned a rival into a cow. Another time, she cursed a nymph, Echo, so she could only repeat the last words spoken to her. Petty, absolutely. Effective, also yes. Fringe tidbit. Some myths say Hera ruled the heavens before Zeus, and that their marriage was more of a political merger than a romance. She had her own cults, temples, and power, long before Olympus became Zeus's bachelor pad. Historians still argue whether Hera's myths reflect genuine reverence for a powerful goddess figure, or whether they were later reshaped to highlight her as just another angry wife in a patriarchal pantheon. Back on Olympus, the divine family tree keeps growing. Usually without anyone consulting the gardener, Ares, god of war, is born to Hera and Zeus, and immediately starts picking fights. Hephaestus, the smith god, is either born to Hera alone or thrown off a mountain by Zeus, depending on who's telling the story. Either way, he ends up limping but brilliant, forging weapons, palaces, and occasionally, golden robot servants. Yes, robots. The Olympians are powerful, but emotionally, let's just say you wouldn't trust them with a group chat. They lie, cheat, rage, forgive, and repeat. They mirror the mortals who worship them, not perfect beings, but flawed, dramatic reflections of human nature, cranked up to 11. You, meanwhile, sit at the edge of Olympus's marble courtyard, sipping something made of nectar and very poor decisions. Watching a lightning storm roll in, the wind smells like ambition. Somewhere in the distance, you hear Athena sharpening a blade, while Hera fumes and Zeus seduces yet another river spirit. And above it all, the sky pulses gently, watching, waiting, remembering that prophecies always come due, because if there's one thing you've learned so far, being king of the gods doesn't mean your job is secure. The air on Olympus grows tenser, like the moment before a string snaps. You're standing at the edge of a throne room, built entirely of gold-veined marble and probably a few stolen thunderclouds. And Zeus is pacing. Again, turns out being king of gods isn't just lightning bolts and ego-stroking. It's also prophecy management, sibling rivalry, divine HR issues, and a steady stream of creatures trying to dethrone you, some metaphorically, some very literally. Zeus, in his prime now, doesn't just have family problems. He has monsters. Enter Typhon, a creature so colossal, so terrifying that even the word monster feels like an understatement. Picture a humanoid form taller than mountains, with 100 snake heads hissing from his shoulders, each spitting fire and ancient curses in different dialects. His arms stretch across the world. His eyes drip venom. His breath sends entire villages into seasonal depression. He is chaos reborn. Gaia, you see, still isn't thrilled with how her Titan children were treated. So, she mates with Tartarus, yes, the pit itself. And voila, Typhon, a walking vengeance bomb. The gods, upon seeing Typhon rise, do what any rational pantheon would do. They flee to Egypt and turn into animals. Zeus becomes a ram, Apollo a crow, Hermes a stork. It's not their proudest moment. Only after regrouping does Zeus decide to fight. The battle that follows is the stuff of divine blockbusters. Mountains are hurled. Oceans boil. Winds scream. Typhon manages to tear out Zeus's sinews, his actual tendons, and hide them in a cave. That's how close he gets to winning. But with the help of Hermes and Pan, yes, the half-goat party god, Zeus recovers, regrows his god muscles, and strikes Typhon down with his full arsenal of thunderbolts. He buries the beast beneath Mount Etna, which, to this day, still erupts with Typhon's rage, or magma, or both. And peace returns temporarily. Fringe tidbit. There's a lesser-known myth that Typhon didn't just have snake heads, he spoke through them, each in a different language, forcing ancient listeners to interpret prophecy through hissing riddles. It's like trying to understand philosophy shouted by angry cobras. Historians still argue whether Typhon symbolizes a real-world fear like invaders from the east, or erupting volcanoes, or if he's just a mythological leftover from an older religion that loved apocalyptic creatures with flair. After this celestial smackdown, Zeus tightens his grip on Olympus. He builds laws, assigns duty, reinforces the divine hierarchy. He doesn't want another cosmic rebellion, and honestly, who can blame him? Poseidon, meanwhile, builds his palace beneath the sea, full of coral chandeliers and judgmental dolphins. He claims the oceans with a trident and a scowl, tossing up new islands like a kid playing with sand. He's powerful, moody, and slightly salty in every sense. And Hades. He retreats into the underworld, which turns out to be less fire and brimstone and more bureaucracy meets Gothic aesthetic. He installs the river Styx, hires Charon as ferry captain, and sets Cerberus, his loyal, three-headed dog, at the gates. Hades isn't evil. He's just introverted, organized, and not here for your overwrought ghost drama. Back upstairs, Zeus gets back to doing what Zeus does best, ruling, brooding, and making questionable romantic choices. His many affairs, lead to a growing population of demigods, half-divine mortals, who will eventually steal the spotlight in later myths. But for now, they're just adorable chaos bombs, waiting to come of age. You wander through Olympus's garden of myths, past golden apple trees and singing fountains, and wonder how it all holds together. There's power, yes, but also jealousy. There's order, but also chaos, bubbling just beneath the surface. The gods rule not because they're perfect, but because they're better at winning. You pass Athena, sharpening her wisdom into strategy. Hera, still muttering about a nymph who will regret everything. Hermes, racing by in winged sandals, probably late to deliver a dream. And Dionysus, he's somewhere in the back, inventing wine. This is the new age. Titans are out. Monsters are buried. Olympus reigns, but the ground beneath your feet, still warm from the last war. And Zeus, still glancing nervously at the horizon, where new threats are always gathering. You wake on Olympus to the gentle sound of harps, birdsong, and the distant, unmistakable clash of divine arguments echoing through the clouds. The Olympians may rule the heavens now, but their drama is just getting warmed up. Thrones have been claimed, titles handed out, and responsibilities vaguely defined, mostly by who complained the least. And in the midst of it all, the 12 Olympian gods, perched atop Mount Olympus, like the world's most chaotic board of directors. You walk the outer halls of Zeus's palace, which somehow smells like both storm clouds and rose petals. The decor leans toward thunderous minimalism, columns taller than your house, ceilings that ripple like sky water. And everywhere you look, gods, lounging in dramatic poses. They've got nothing but time and grudges. Zeus, of course, reigns as chairman. He holds the thunderbolt, barks orders, seduces clouds, and micromanages fate. His throne is carved from clouds, gold, and lightning, which sounds impressive until you remember he once got tricked into raising a mortal child because he didn't read the fine print. Hera, his long-suffering queen, sits beside him regal, sharp-eyed, and seething. She rules marriage, which is ironic, considering hers is a long-running cautionary tale. But don't mistake her elegance for passivity. Hera has weaponized dignity. She doesn't scream, she plots. Poseidon rarely bothers showing up. He prefers his palace under the sea, where he can throw temper tantrums by triggering tsunamis. But when he does attend Olympus meetings, he drips seawater on the rugs and complains about humans building too many boats. Hades is never there. He hates social functions and group politics. He's more comfortable in his shadowy underworld, organizing souls and maintaining his three-headed dog's flea treatments. Athena arrives early, with scrolls, plans, and passive-aggressive notes about strategy. She's respected, even feared, because she doesn't care if you like her. Wisdom, after all, doesn't need applause. Apollo strums a lyre at inappropriate moments, declares vague profecias, and claims credit for every sunset. His twin sister, Artemis, arrives with a pack of wolves and refuses to sit indoors. She loathes cities, men, and questions about marriage. Ares storms in whenever war breaks out, or when he just feels bored. He's bloodlust in designer sandals, all muscle, and zero long-term planning. Aphrodite enters after him, smelling of myrrh and knowing glances. She makes people fall in love or lust just to see what happens. Hermes, the messenger, floats by on winged sandals, pockets full of lies and gossip. He's the god of boundaries and also of breaking them. If anything important happens, he knows before it's even finished happening. Hephaestus arrives late, covered in soot, holding a golden wrench. The god of fire and forge. He's responsible for every divine gadget, throne, and sparkly object you've seen. He doesn't talk much, but his inventions do plenty of speaking for him. And then there's Dionysus, the wild card, god of wine, theater, madness, and bad ideas that sounded fun at the time. He crashes parties he wasn't invited to, throws ones no one asked for, and still manages to teach deep cosmic truths through drunken poetry. Fringe tidbit: Dionysus is technically the newest Olympian, only recognized after proving himself through a series of divine trials, including taming tigers, teaching winemaking, and literally descending into the underworld to rescue his mother. Historians still argue whether the 12 Olympians were a fixed pantheon or more of a rotating caste. Some lists exclude Hades. Others swap out Dionysus for Hestia. The Greeks weren't sticklers for consistency unless you insulted Athena's weaving. So here you are, wandering the echoing halls of Olympus as divine egos brush past you in perfumed gusts. Every corridor hums with the power of immortality. Every stairwell could lead to a banquet or a blood feud. You pass rooms filled with maps of mortal kingdoms. Others hold oracles scribbling future wars. One has a peacock lounging on a chaise, glaring at you like it knows your entire browsing history. Being a god, it turns out, is a full-time performance. They're not omniscient. They're not even omnibenevolent. They're just immortals, immensely powerful, deeply flawed, and eternally tangled in the messy business of fate and feeling. But it works. Somehow, Olympus holds, not because it's peaceful, but because it balances each god, each domain, keeps the others in check. Fire and water, war and love, wisdom and madness, creation and death. And you're just the observer, the wanderer between stories, the mortal who dared to climb Olympus without turning into a cautionary tale. Yet, so you sit by a column, sip something fizzy and suspiciously ambrosial, and listen as the gods bicker, plan, and shape the world below. The cosmos spins on. By now, you've figured out that Olympus isn't so much a serene realm of divine harmony as it is a celestial reality show with lightning bolts. And no contestant embodies the chaotic brilliance of that show more than Hera, queen of the gods, goddess of marriage, and undisputed empress of the slow-burn grudge. You find her seated on a marble bench overlooking the mortal world. Her expression the perfect blend of elegance, calculation, and I will remember this forever. Hera doesn't shout. She doesn't storm off. She simply lifts one eyebrow, and entire kingdoms rethink their decisions. On paper, Hera rules over all things matrimonial. In practice, she's the goddess of coping with a wildly unfaithful husband and turning vengeance into performance art. Zeus, as you've probably noticed, has the romantic loyalty of a toddler in a toy store. Hera knows. Everyone knows. He disguises himself as bulls, swans, showers of gold, or literally anything with a pulse, and still thinks it counts as subtle. But Hera never strikes at Zeus directly. That's not her style. Instead, she goes for the side characters, the nymphs, princesses, or unlucky mortals who happen to catch Zeus's shape-shifting eye. Take Io, a priestess of Hera herself. Zeus falls for her and, to hide the affair, turns her into a cow. Hera sees through it immediately. Instead of reversing the spell, she asks for the cow as a gift, then posts a 100-eyed giant named Argus to guard her 24/7. That's right, Hera invents the first overbearing boyfriend for revenge. Then there's Semele, a mortal woman tricked into asking Zeus to show her his true divine form. Hera set it all up, knowing full well a mortal couldn't survive such a reveal. Boom. Semele's reduced to cosmic ashes. Hera, unbothered, moves on to the next. She turns Callisto, one of Artemis's hunting companions, into a bear. She harasses Leto, the soon-to-be mother of Apollo and Artemis, so relentlessly that no land dares give her shelter. Leto finally gives birth leaning against a palm tree on a floating island. The baby gods come out radiant and furious. Fringe tidbit. Hera once adopted a mortal child, not out of compassion, but to mess with Heracles. She nursed him unknowingly, and when she realized who he was, flung him away. Her milk sprayed across the sky, creating the Milky Way. Yes, Greek mythology explains the entire galaxy as one of Hera's passive-aggressive accidents. Historians still argue whether Hera was originally a supreme goddess in pre-Olympian worship, perhaps more powerful than Zeus in early matriarchal cults. Some believe her role was later rewritten to emphasize her jealousy, downplaying her authority in favor of Zeus's rule. Despite her reputation, Hera isn't just a villainess draped in peacock feathers. She's fiercely protective of lawful marriage. She supports legitimate heirs. She blesses loyal unions. When not embroiled in Zeus-related catastrophes, she's a just and sometimes even generous queen. But that's the tragedy. Really, Hera is complex, majestic, brilliant, principled, and yet always cast in the same tired role, the jealous wife. Her fury is seen as petty, even when it's directed at real betrayal. Her power is often minimized, even though everyone on Olympus fears her disapproval more than Zeus's lightning. You watch her now, as she gazes down at the mortal world, fingers laced, thoughts unreadable. A breeze rustles the fabric of her robes. A peacock circles her ankles with the dignity of a creature who knows it once had 100 eyes. You wonder what it's like to be eternal, powerful and constantly underestimated. Then a golden apple rolls to a stop at her feet. You've seen enough mythos by now to know nothing good ever starts with a golden apple. It's inscribed, "To the fairest." It will spark a feud between goddesses. It will cause a divine pageant. It will drag the gods into war. And yes, Hera will be at the center of it. But for now, she simply lifts the apple, turns it in her hands, and smiles faintly, not kindly. This smile is prophecy, and the next chapter. It begins with beauty and ends with burning ships. You drift further into the palace gardens, where the air changes from Hera's sharp, measured intensity to something wilder, more elemental. The wind tangles your hair, salt clings to your skin, and distant thunder murmurs low. Somewhere nearby, a trident stabs into stone. Poseidon is not in a good mood. To be fair, he rarely is. The god of the sea has always been the Olympian with the least patience for subtlety. While Zeus might scheme and Hera plots, Poseidon storms. If you anger him, expect your coastline to vanish overnight. If you build a city without asking him first, it might sink before the ink on your temple plans dries. Today, he stands barefoot on the marble edge of Olympus, staring out over his domain, the endless, pulsing ocean below. His beard is tangled with seaweed. His skin smells of brine and old shipwrecks. Around him swirl unseen currents of raw power. Poseidon's realm isn't just waves and salt water. It's the unknowable deep. Every sea monster, every whirlpool, every sudden squall, that's his doing. Or at least, he lets it happen. His palace beneath the sea is made of coral, shell, and whalebone. Dolphins serve as messengers. Mermaids sing his announcements. He rides a golden chariot drawn by hippocamps, half horse, half fish. All attitude. But even gods have insecurities. Poseidon has long felt like the third wheel in Olympus's cosmic timeshare. Zeus rules the sky, Hades the underworld. Poseidon got the sea, which sounds grand, until you remember it was also where unwanted things were thrown, like Uranus's leftovers. The sea, to the gods, was a dumping ground and a mystery. So Poseidon fights, not just monsters, but for respect. He famously competed with Athena to become patron of Athens. He struck the earth with his trident, offering a salt spring, or, depending on the version, a war horse. Athena planted an olive tree. The people chose the tree. Poseidon hasn't quite let that go. Fringe tidbit in some myths. Poseidon created the first horse, sculpting it from sea foam. Others say he was so obsessed with chasing a land goddess that he created the horse to impress her. She turned into a mare. He turned into a stallion. You can fill in the rest. Historians still argue whether Poseidon was originally a pre-Greek sea deity or adopted from even older Mediterranean traditions. His cults varied widely. Some feared him as a tempest. Others prayed for safe passage and plentiful fish. But don't assume he's only rage and storms. Poseidon is also tied to earthquakes and freshwater springs. His moods control tides. His whispers shape coasts. And when he's pleased, sailors sing his name like a lullaby. Of course, he's not usually pleased. He once cursed Odysseus to wander for 10 years because the man blinded his son, Polyphemus. He flooded lands out of spite, raised monsters for fun, and occasionally fathered creatures with names like Scylla, Triton, and possibly a whole island. Poseidon's temper is legendary, but it's also lonely. His palace may be vast, but it echoes. He doesn't have a regular crew of fellow deities dropping by for ambrosia and gossip. The sea is isolation incarnate. You find him now as he lifts his trident skyward, sending a crack of lightning across the clouds, not because he wants war, but because Zeus got credit for the last storm, and Poseidon, he just wants to remind everyone, the sky doesn't rumble without his permission. A wave crashes in the mortal world far below. Somewhere, a ship creaks uneasily. A fisherman says a prayer. You glance at the god's face, weathered, powerful, unreadable. He sees you watching, and says nothing, but you feel it. A pulse, low and ancient, calling you into deeper water. Word count 1. 194. The temperature drops before you see him. The light dims just slightly, as if a distant eclipse has casually wandered by. And then, from the cool mist rising at the foot of a darkened archway, Ages emerges. You're still in Olympus, but not really. This part of the palace is quieter, colder, carved in darker stone, with veins of obsidian flickering under your feet like trapped starlight. There are fewer torches here, and the shadows linger longer than they should. Hades does not wear a crown. He doesn't need one. His presence alone is enough to make the air tighten. His robe flows like funeral smoke. His gaze is direct, not cruel, but ancient. This is a god who sees through lies. Because he's seen everything else already, he does not smile. Unlike his brothers, Hades rarely interferes in mortal affairs. He doesn't start wars, doesn't hurl waves at ships, doesn't send plagues unless provoked. His kingdom lies below, where the dead walk in silence and memory breathes heavier than air. His underworld is vast, far bigger than mortals imagined. There's the river Styx, the river Lethe, the river Acheron, and more. Each one flows with a different purpose oaths. Forgetfulness, sorrow. There's Charon, the ferryman with empty eyes and a hand always open for a coin. There's Cerberus, his loyal three-headed dog, who guards the gate not to keep the dead in, but to keep the living out. And within it all lies Persephone, Hode's queen. That story's a complicated one. Persephone was the daughter of Demeter, goddess of the harvest. She was picking flowers in a meadow when the earth split open, and Hades emerged in his chariot, sweeping her away to the underworld. Whether she was kidnapped or chose to stay, historians still argue. Some versions paint her as a passive victim. Others, especially later ones, depict her as a willing queen who found power in the shadows. Demeter, devastated, refused to let anything grow. The world withered into famine. Eventually, a deal was struck. Persephone would spend part of the year with her mother and part with her husband. Thus, the seasons were born, spring and summer for Demeter's joy, autumn and winter for her sorrow. It's a myth of loss, return, and the haunting rhythm of nature. Fringe tidbit. Some say Hades offered Persephone not just a throne, but a crown forged from the bones of stars, a symbol that she wasn't just his bride, but his equal. She ruled beside him, not beneath him, and her name was spoken in the quiet prayers of women seeking agency in a world of gods. You trail behind Hades now, as he moves with unhurried steps. Time doesn't follow him the same way. He pauses at an overlook Olympus stretching bright behind you, and the mortal realm far below. His expression softens for just a moment. He knows death intimately, but he does not cause it. Mortals often mistake Hades for the enemy, simply because they fear what lies after life. But he does not punish them. That job, oddly enough, belongs to the Furies' ancient spirits of vengeance, who stalk murderers, liars, and oath-breakers, especially those who think they can cheat death. The truly wicked are sent to Tartarus, a pit deeper than night. But most souls, they drift through the underworld in the asphodel fields, dreaming echoes of their lives, sometimes waiting for judgment, A few, very few, reach Elysium, the fields of eternal peace. Fewer still get to be reborn. Hades is just the gatekeeper, the accountant, the judge with an immortal clipboard. He's also, perhaps, the most honest of the gods. He doesn't promise sunshine or glory. He promises truth. And the truth is, everything ends, even for the divine. You sit beside him in silence. Arare honor. The breeze carries the scent of cold stone and distant myrrh. Somewhere far below, a soul makes its final journey across the Styx. Hades finally speaks, and his voice is quiet, not booming. Everything finds its place, he says, and in that moment, you believe him. You blink, and the darkness fades. Shadows curl backward like mist retreating from dawn, and the chill in your bones loosens its grip. Hades is gone. Or perhaps he never truly stood beside you in the first place. The stones under your feet warm again. Sunlight returns in soft gold. And now, a new sound begins to echo through Olympus, the sharp, rhythmic clash of armor and sandals on marble. From across the training courtyard strides Athena, goddess of wisdom, war, and a near-lethal level of emotional restraint. She moves with the calm focus of someone who has already run every possible outcome through her mind and eliminated the ones involving tears or theatrics. Athena doesn't wear a crown of flowers or lounge in vine-covered grottos. No. She's clad in a bronze breastplate, etched with owls and thunderbolts. A spear balanced lightly in one hand, and the aegis, that snaky, terrifying shield, fringed with the face of Medusa resting on her shoulder, like it's just a fashion choice. You remember, of course, that she sprang fully formed from Zeus's head, which probably explains a lot. No childhood. No messy teenage years. Just instant adult smart. Serious. And ready to reorganize your entire military strategy before lunch. But war, to Athena, isn't about chaos. That's Ares' department. And she frankly finds him exhausting. Her domain is strategy, justice, and protecting cities from their worst instincts. She doesn't revel in bloodshed, she prevents it. When possible. And when it's not, she makes sure her side wins. Finding a tidbit unlike most Olympians. Athena remained virgin by choice, not out of naivety, but independence. She didn't need a consort, didn't want a distraction, and never cared much for romance. Mortals who tried to woo her usually ended up regretting it, or transformed into something small, flammable, or insect-like. She's also known as a patron of crafts, spinning, weaving, shipbuilding, even cooking though, mostly the parts involving tools. Athena once invented the bridle to tame horses, because she thought Poseidon's creations needed some humility. But perhaps her most famous myth involves Arachne, a mortal woman who boasted that her weaving surpassed even the gods. Athena, being Athena, he gave her a chance to prove it. Arachne did, and wove a tapestry so flawless, so brutally honest about divine misdeeds, that even Athena was impressed and furious. Some say she destroyed the tapestry and turned Arachne into a spider as punishment. Others whisper it was mercy, letting the girl continue weaving for eternity, safe from the wrath of more vengeful gods. Historians still argue whether Athena's actions were arrogance or reluctant admiration turned sour. Athena isn't soft, but she's fair. When heroes like Odysseus, Perseus, or Diomedes needed help, they prayed to her not because she'd hand them victory, but because she'd teach them how to earn it. She even gave Perseus the mirrored shield he used to slay Medusa, and later placed Medusa's head on her own aegis, as if to say, "Fear not me, fear what I protect." You watch her now, as she trains with a set of sparring automata bronze warriors she built herself. Because sparring partners with opinions are inefficient. Her movements are precise, almost mathematical. Each strike is balanced, each block economical. She fights like someone who's already calculated your next 3 mistakes. Her temple, the Parthenon, towers above Athens, gleaming in the sun. It holds a massive statue of her, built of ivory and gold, with a spear that catches light from miles away. The Athenians worship her not just as a goddess, but as an ideal of reason, justice, and resilience. And here's the thing for all the divine chaos around her. Athena remains constant. She's a fixed point. She doesn't chase attention. She doesn't change with the winds. She is the wind. If it had a tactical map and a very sharp spear, she notices you watching. There's no warmth in her nod, but no threat either. Just acknowledgement, as if to say, you've seen the storm. Now, learn to navigate it. And you realize of all the gods you've met so far, she might be the one you could actually trust. The clang of bronze fades behind you as Athena disappears into the mist of her own order. And soon, laughter replaces the quiet tension. Not the calm kind, not the restrained chuckle of some wise philosopher reflecting on the mysteries of life. No, this is the full-bellied, slightly chaotic, grape juice-stained cackle of someone who has absolutely no intention of following anyone's rules, including gravity. Welcome to the court of Dionysus, god of wine, madness, theater, pleasure, illusion, and impulse control issues. Also, the only Olympian likely to greet you with, "You made it. You're just in time for the weird part." You've entered his domain at sunset. Golden haze slinks over vines heavy with bursting grapes. Satyrs lounge in hammocks woven from ivy. Maenads dance barefoot across the grass, their laughter curling like smoke. Music is everywhere, panpipes, tambourines, the rhythmic clap of hands and hooves, and in the middle of it all, a god with tousled curls, flushed cheeks, and eyes that sparkle like secrets. Dionysus is unpredictable. He'll kiss your forehead and crown you with flowers, then turn your wine into seawater because you called him a minor god. He's both invitation and warning. You do not control Dionysus. You surrender to him, his origin story. It depends who you ask and how much they've had to drink. In one version, he's the son of Zeus and Semele. A mortal woman burned alive when she saw Zeus's true form. Remember Hera's mischief. Zeus snatched the unborn Dionysus from her womb and sewed him into his thigh. Yep, his thigh. 9 months later, Tada Dionysus was reborn. In another version, he was raised in secrecy by nymphs, wandering from land to land, learning the secrets of nature, intoxication, and human longing. He was rejected by many, Eva-driven Mott, but each rejection made him stronger, more transcendent. Fringe tidbit. Some versions say Dionysus died and was resurrected. making him one of the few Greek gods associated with a kind of rebirth, a theme that scholars have connected with seasonal cycles, agricultural rituals, and, curiously, mystery religions, later adopted by the Romans. Historians still argue whether Dionysus was originally a foreign deity imported from the East, or a suppressed chthonic figure, representing both the life force of the vine and the death ecstasy of trance states. His myths, after all, oscillate between joy and destruction, insight and insanity. You sit beside him now. He offers you a goblet that seems to refill itself with whatever you most crave. It tastes like spring and forgetting. Around you, the party tilts gently toward divine fever dream, but Dionysus's gifts aren't just about indulgence. He's also god of theater of masks, of transformation, of revealing truth through illusion. Every ancient tragedy and comedy performed under a Grecian sky dedicated to him. He doesn't just intoxicate. He liberates. From expectations, from identity, from sorrow. His followers, the Maenads, danced in frenzied ecstasy, sometimes dangerous, sometimes transcendent. They weren't just revelers, they were priests, tearing apart the ordinary to glimpse the divine. He smiles at you, now mischievous, maybe even compassionate. Drink, he says, and see what lies behind the curtain. And you do. The trees blur into columns. The stars become footlights. Your body, weightless, somewhere. A mask is handed to you. Tragedy on one side, comedy on the other. The gods, you realize, don't just rule. They perform. And Dionysus, he's the playwright. You awaken hours or lifetimes later, with grape stains on your fingertips, laughter in your lungs, and a vague sense that you learned something very important that slipped away just before you could write it down. But you're not the same, and Dionysus wouldn't have it any other way. You stagger away from Dionysus's grove, your feet still remembering rhythms your mind can't quite explain, your ears echoing with music that may or may not have come from inside your own skull. The world feels tilted now, like reality's wineglass is only half full and probably leaking, and just as you start to think, maybe things are calming down now, you hear the distant clash of swords. You already know who this is, Ares. If Athena is war's brain, Ares is its biceps ripped, rash, and ready to throw hands at the slightest provocation. He doesn't strategize. He charges. He doesn't plan victories. He forces them, and he's stomping across Olympus in full armor. Helmet gleaming. Spear stabbing at invisible enemies. As if the mere act of not being in a war counts as some kind of personal insult. You can practically smell the testosterone. Ares is the god of bloodlust, fury, and no thoughts. Just stab. The Greeks respected his power, but didn't really like him. He's not clever like Hermes, or noble like Apollo. He's the guy who shows up to your picnic, flips the table, and challenges the wine to a duel. And yet he has a place. Chaos has its rhythm. Violence has its rules. And war, as ugly as it is, has always followed humanity like a shadow. Fringe tidbit. Ares was wildly unpopular in Athens. His altar stood outside the city walls, and his priests were notably rare. Sparta, On the other hand, whole different vibe. They adored him. In fact, they had a temple where shackles were placed on his statue to bind his power and keep it focused only on enemies. Now here's the spicy part. Ares and Aphrodite were a thing. A very loud, very badly hidden thing, while she was technically married to Hephaestus, the god of forge and fire. Aphrodite didn't exactly believe in monogamy. Her affair with Ares was the worst-kept secret in Olympus, and when Hephaestus found out, he crafted a trap of invisible chains. Catching the pair mid-moment, he summoned the entire pantheon to watch. So yes, the gods invented public shaming long before Twitter. Historians still argue whether this myth reflects Greek discomfort with raw passion, where Aphrodite and Ares represent opposing forces' desire and destruction that are both alluring and dangerous when combined. You follow Ares now, as he leads a pack of spectral warriors through an imaginary battlefield carved from storm clouds. He trains constantly, not because he needs to, but because standing still makes him nervous. Peace, to Ares, is just the awkward intermission between wars. He's not evil. He's just simple, pure, in the way wildfires are. He doesn't lie. He doesn't scheme. He shows up, fights, and leaves scorched footprints behind. If Athena teaches you how to win, Ares teaches you what happens when everyone loses. There's a brutal honesty to him. He doesn't pretend war is noble. He doesn't dress it up in pretty metaphors. He revels in its madness. Inoise. It's blood. It's the only time he feels alive. And yet, even among the gods, he's lonely. You see it in the way he watches Athena from afar. Bitter and envious. She wins wars and gets temples. He wins battles and gets blamed. He's not without worshippers. Though, every army prays to him before a siege. Every doomed soldier whispers his name. When swords clash, he's written into every banner soaked with dust and sweat. And he hears them all. You sit beside his battlefield now. Not as a warrior, but as a witness. The clashing fades. The thunder dies down. Ares stares into the clouds, fists clenched, as if waiting for the next war to rise from the mist. Then he turns, sees you, and offers a nod. Not out of kindness, but respect. You haven't run. Few do. And in that moment, he lets you walk away. Not because he has to, because he chooses to. You wander away from Ares and his thunderous rehearsal of doom, grateful to leave behind the smell of sweat, steel, and ego. As you pass under a quiet portico, the world around you seems to slow, not stop, but settle. Even your heartbeat seems to hush, and then you hear it, the gentle thrum of a bowstring. A heartbeat behind the breeze. You're being watched, but not with suspicion. With precision. A figure steps into view, barefoot and hooded, with a quiver at her back and a wolf at her heel. She moves like moonlight keyed, silver, and too fast to follow. Artemis, goddess of the hunt, the moon, wild animals, young maidens, and extremely well-defined personal boundaries. She doesn't speak right away. Artemis rarely does. Conversation with her is earned, not assumed. She sizes you up the way a hunter sizes up a ripple in the trees, not hostile, but wary. She's not like her twin brother, Apollo, who prefers crowds, praise, and musical duels. Artemis prefers forests, silence, the company of nymphs and animals. Her followers are often young women who've chosen to avoid marriage, entanglement, or cities. And frankly, she likes it that way. Fringe tidbit. Artemis once helped deliver her own twin at birth because she was born first, and immediately turned around to act as midwife, which either proves her divine power or sets the most absurd standard for overachievement in sibling history. She's fiercely protective of her independence. Mortals or gods who threatened it tended not to last very long. Take Actaeon, a hunter who stumbled upon her bathing. Innocent mistake. Maybe, but Artemis turned him into a stag, and his own hunting dogs tore him apart. Swift justice. No appeal process. Or Orion, a mighty hunter and, depending on the version, either her close friend or would-be suitor. Some say she loved him. Others claim she killed him herself, accidentally or otherwise. Historians still argue whether Artemis was expressing grief, jealousy, or guarding her vow of chastity. There's a starry belt in the sky bearing his name. She placed it there. So whatever happened, she remembered. You follow her now into a grove at the edge of Olympus, where the trees arch like cathedral ceilings. Deer watch from the shadows. Somewhere in the distance, a stream sings to itself. This is her domain. Not palaces or politics, but wild places, unmapped spaces. Artemis is the guardian of thresholds between night and day, child and woman, civilization and wilderness. She glances over her shoulder at you, eyes like polished moonstone, still measuring, still choosing whether you're friend, foe, or just another forgettable mortal. You sit quietly on a mossy rock. A hare hops past. The wolf beside her yawns. For a moment, there is nothing but wind and branches and the rhythm of a world that doesn't need your input to continue spinning. Then, softly, she speaks. Most things run. She says, the brave ones walk away quietly. It's not a threat. It's not even advice. It's a reminder. She is freedom, and freedom always costs something. In myth, Artemis never fully conforms. She doesn't get tied down by politics, romance, or even group photos of the Olympians. She walks alone, or leads others who also choose solitude, and yet she's not lonely. She's the glow of the moon over still water, the creak of the trees when you're deep enough to lose the path, the breath you hold when something sacred crosses your line of sight. You rise. She watches. And then she turns, melts back into the woods, and is gone. Only the moon remains, watching in her place. The silver hush of Artemis fades behind you, and soon the world brightens, warms, and begins to hum with the low buzz of structure and sunlight. You step into a hall of order marble, arranged with divine geometry. Every line deliberate, every column singing with golden proportion, and then you hear it, the pluck of a lyre, the echo of a perfectly tuned chord, and a voice smoother than sunlight on water. You found Apollo, god of music, prophecy, healing, plague, yes, both, archery, poetry, and really, whatever else needs a little extra brilliance. He's the only god who can strike a pose and look like he invented light, which, in some myths, he sort of did. He stands now at the center of an open courtyard, his hair glinting like polished amber, strumming his lyre as 9 muses circle him in adoration. They're not just backup dancers. They're goddesses of the arts: Calliope for epic poetry, Clio for history, Erato for love poems, and so on. Together, they compose the divine soundtrack of Olympus. If Dionysus is chaos and liberation, Apollo is form and balance. Where his twin sister Artemis is untamed nature, Apollo is civilization's golden face. He's the god people pray to when they need clarity. But clarity can cut. You might get a prophecy from Apollo, but no guarantee it'll help. Just ask Cassandra, a Trojan priestess who spurned his romantic advances. Apollo cursed her so that she'd always tell the truth, and no one would ever believe her. Fringe tidbit. Apollo's love life is a long list of unrequited pursuits. He fell for Daphne, who prayed for escape and was turned into a laurel tree. He still wears her leaves like a heartbreak crown. He once tried to romance Hyacinthus, a mortal youth, but a tragic accident during a discus match, maybe a jealous wind, God's doing, killed the boy. From his blood, Apollo created the hyacinth flower. Historians still argue whether Apollo began as a purely solar deity or as an older pastoral god, absorbed into the Greek pantheon. Some early cults depict him with wolfish or plague-bearing aspects, hardly the polished sun chaser we usually see. But Apollo's contradictions are part of his charm. He heals with one hand, curses with the other. He brings prophecy, but sometimes it ruins the listener. His temples are beautiful, but the truth spoken there often break the people who hear them. The most famous, Delphi, at the Temple of Apollo in Delphi. The Pythia, or oracle. We would sit above a chasm, said to exhale vapors of prophecy. In a trance, she would speak. Apollo's words, usually cryptic, often devastating. Kings based wars on her syllables. Families unraveled over her riddles. And yet, they kept coming, because truth, even painful truth, is divine. You sit now, as Apollo finishes his melody. The notes shimmer in the air. Not kite fading. He turns to you, not smug, not gentle, but luminous. He doesn't offer you a seat. He assumes you'll make one. He doesn't ask questions. He already knows what you need to ask. There's warmth in his presence. Not comfort exactly, but potential. You could write 1,000 songs in his light. But if you lie to yourself even once, you'll burn. He hands you a laurel leaf. Not a gift. A test. Speak, he says, and mean it. No pressure. You look around at the order, the beauty, the impossibly high standard of his presence. He's the sibling who always gets straight, has and still has time to win gold at the godly equivalent of the Olympics. But you also see the cracks, the ache behind the eyes of someone who knows everything and can still do nothing to stop fate. He is, after all, the god of prophecy, not prevention. The sun flares behind him. You shield your eyes. He vanishes into its glow, and you're left holding that laurel leaf, wondering what truth you're not ready to hear. Still holding that laurel leaf, you move forward, not sure whether you're following Apollo's light or simply escaping its intensity. Either way, the air begins to thicken again. The angles around you soften. The sun lowers its voice, and golden light dims to a creamy bronze. Then, from somewhere deeper within Olympus, You hear the clink of hammer on anvil, the hiss of cooling metal, and the deep exhale of a forge too old to remember its first flame. You've reached the domain of Hephaestus, god of fire, forge, metalwork, invention, and divine craftsmanship, also patron of the underappreciated, the overworked, and the people who fix things, while everyone else gets the credit. He doesn't greet you with fanfare. No music. No laurel crowns. Hephaestus doesn't need applause. He's too busy making the world function. He's hunched over a massive bronze contraption, a hydra-shaped fountain, perhaps, or a sentient wine cooler, his hands flying faster than your eyes can track. Sparks jump across the room like fireflies on espresso. He looks up, nods once, and keeps hammering. His hands are calloused, his tunic is singed, and his expression is one of quiet, focused satisfaction. Hephaestus's origin story isn't pretty. In one version, he was born deformed, and Hera, ashamed or angry, threw him off Olympus. He landed in the sea, where nymphs raised him and taught him the secrets of metal. In another version, it was Zeus who cast him out after an argument. Either way, he got used to falling and clawing his way back. Fringe tidbit: after crafting a stunning golden throne, Hephaestus sent it to Hera as a peace offering. The moment she sat down, it trapped her. The other gods had to beg him to return and free her. He agreed only if they gave him Aphrodite as a wife. Aphrodite agreed in name, if not in practice. Their marriage was theatrical. She preferred Ares. He preferred staying busy. Historians still argue whether Hephaestus's myths reflect a cultural reverence for artisans or a veiled discomfort with disability and difference. Some scholars suggest his role represents the tension between visible beauty and the hidden labor that sustains it. You walk through his workshop now. Every corner holds a wonder. There's a golden net that moves like silk, mechanical owls flitting about on tiny gears, a fleet of tripods that can walk themselves to Olympus's dining hall, a half-built automaton that hums softly to itself as if dreaming. And, at the heart of it all, the forge. The flames burn a color you've never seen. Not red, not orange, something between memory and invention. Hephaestus feeds it with old stars, broken promises, and a bit of divine coal dust. He doesn't speak often, but his work speaks for him. This is the god who forged Achilles' armor, Hermes' winged sandals, Apollo's sun chariot, and even Zeus's lightning bolts. If it glows, flies, or explodes artistically, he probably made it. And yet, he's not worshipped with the same pageantry as others. His temples are Keter, his festivals more humble. People pray to him when their tools break, when their kilns crack, or when they need to build something strong enough to hold grief. Hephaestus doesn't judge. He fixes. You sit beside him now. He hands you a gear perfectly balanced, forged from meteoric iron, etched with designs only gods can fully understand. You don't ask what it's for. He doesn't explain, but you feel something in it: weight, purpose, potential. Then, gently, he speaks. Beauty without function is a lie. It's not bitter. It's just true. And you realize, where most gods command or destroy, Hephaestus builds. He doesn't sculpt marble ideals. He welds reality into something worth keeping. The forge bellows once more, and the room brightens with fresh sparks. You stand, nod to the god of the hammer, and walk out carrying a piece of something indestructible, something earned. The air outside Hephaestus's forge is thick with smoke and wonder. Your skin smells faintly of iron and celestial soot. As the clang of his hammer fades, so does the heavy atmosphere of labor. The marble underfoot warms again not to Apollo's gold or Dionysus's fever, but to something slower, rounder, more plush. You hear the distant murmur of conversation, clinking dishes, and a warm laugh that sounds like it belongs in a kitchen, not a palace. You follow it, and the scent hits you before the doorway even opens honey cakes, roasted lamb, fake wine, and oddly freshly churned butter. Welcome to the hearth of Hestia, goddess of the home. The hearth, domestic life, and every quietly lit corner where people feel safe enough to exhale. No fanfare announces her presence. No torch-bearing acolytes or thunderous proclamations. Hestia is what happens after the drama when you sit down. Take off your shoes. And finally, let your shoulders drop. She is, quite literally, the fire in the center of things. Every Greek home, every temple, every city had a sacred hearth in her name, not just for warmth or cooking, but for ritual, for anchoring the world. Fringe tidbit. Hestia is technically one of the original Olympians, child of Cronus and Rhea, and sibling to Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. But she gets left out of most dramatic god stories because, well, she didn't do drama. She was offered marriage by both Poseidon and Apollo. She turned them both down. She swore an oath of eternal virginity, not from prudishness, but from purpose. She didn't want thrones or alliances. She wanted peace. Historians still argue whether Hestia's decline in popular myths reflects a shift in Greek priorities from domestic stability to heroic conquest. As stories became louder, flashier, and more blood-soaked, her quiet constancy faded into the background. But she was never forgotten. Not really. You enter her space. It's not a palace or a fortress. It's a home. A wide stone hearth glows at the center. Cushions circle it. The light flickers softly, casting gentle shadows on dried herbs, neatly stacked amphorae, and lovingly repaired furniture. Hestia is there, tending the fire with a long-handled iron rod. She doesn't wear armor or silk. Her robe is simple, her hair pinned back with a wooden comb. She sees you, smiles, not dazzlingly, not divinely just, like someone who's genuinely glad you arrived safely. She offers you a seat, then bread, then a napkin, then water with lemon and a slice of reassurance. You realize she knows everything that's happened so far. Every god you've met, every misstep, every overwhelmed inhale, and she doesn't need you to explain. Because she's the one who kept the hearth warm while you were gone. She asks nothing of you. There's no riddle to solve, no trial to endure, no magical object to obtain. But the quiet here, it's earned. It's made of layered silences, meals shared, stories whispered, small kindnesses left like folded blankets at the foot of your memories. You glance around and realize something strange. This feels more divine than anything you've encountered so far. Not because it glows or floats or smites, but because it stays. In a world of chaos and thunderbolts, Hestia is the one who keeps the kettle full and the door unlocked. Fringe cult practices once believed that if Hestia's flame went out, disaster would follow not from her wrath, but from the unraveling of what keeps people together: home, community, the idea that someone waits for you, even if all they do is warm your bread. She turns to you now, still tending the fire, and says only this: "Remember what centers you." Then she nods at the door. You leave slowly, not because you're pushed out, but because comfort is easy to melt into, and you've still got gods to meet and truths to unearth. The hearth stays behind, burning, constant, yours. You step out of Hestia's quiet glow and back into the mosaic swirl of Olympus, where marble pathways twist like stories in a bard's mouth. Your shoulders still hum with warmth from her hearth. And for a moment, the thought crosses your mind. Maybe it's time to stop. Maybe that was enough. Maybe you've met the heart of the pantheon, but Olympus, à sévère, has other plans. A gust of wind nearly knocks you off your feet. Not a breeze. This is a deliberate shove. Scrolls scatter. A marble vase topless. Somewhere, a goat screams, and then laughter. Not the seductive lilt of Dionysus, nor the warm chuckle of Hestia. This is sharp, high, and threaded with trickery. Hermes, you don't even see him at first. You feel him everywhere at once. A wink in the sky, a footstep behind you, a breath on your ear, and then finally, a hand on your shoulder and a hey.you. Buddy, did you drop this as he hands you? A loaf of bread you definitely didn't bring. Hermes, god of travelers, thieves, merchants, tricksters, heralds, boundaries, and oh yes, souls of the dead. Because nothing says multitasking like delivering both invoices and spirits. He's dressed like someone who could be either your Uber driver or your divine parole officer tunic slightly rumpled. Sandals winged, eyes constantly scanning for loopholes, exits, or opportunities to sell you something. Fringe tidbit: Hermes is one of the few gods who moves freely between Olympus, Earth, and the underworld. He invented the lyre from a tortoise shell, as you do, stole Apollo's cattle as a baby, and talked his way out of punishment by gifting Apollo the aforementioned lyre. Bargaining level: Olympic. Historians still argue whether Hermes began as a purely pastoral figure protector of flocks and roads, or as an older boundary deity absorbed into later cults. His presence in so many roles may reflect how ancient Greeks viewed the divine, not as fixed icons, but as flexible forces adapting to human needs, trades, and mischief. You try to keep your eye on him, but he shifts, blurs, hops across space like he's made of caffeine and secrets. One moment, he's sitting on a ledge dangling his legs. The next, he's leading you down a corridor you're pretty sure wasn't there 5 seconds ago. Being a god's a lot of paperwork. He kips, handing you a scroll covered in unintelligible symbols. I mostly pretend to read it. And just when you think he's pure comic relief, he pauses before a heavy iron door, looks you dead in the eye. You know I guide souls to the underworld. Right. You nod, unsure where this is going. He leans in. The dead, they talk. They remember everything. You swallow. Hermes doesn't smile now. He's not scary. But there's a weight behind his gaze. a reminder that laughter is a tool, and tools are sometimes weapons. Then he flips back, smirks, and pats your back. Anyway, let's go meet someone really fun. He zips ahead, muttering something about gambling debts and cursed sandals. But before you follow, you look at the door again, the one he paused beside. The handle's worn smooth. The hinges are gold, but scuffed. You realize that's the door he uses to lead souls down. Not with a trumpet, not with a flame, just a hand on the shoulder and a voice saying, "This way." And they go, because when Hermes talks, you listen, even the dead. He's the god who gets you there, wherever there is. You blink, and he's behind you again. "Got lost, didn't you?" he says, grinning. "Don't worry. I do that to people." He tosses you a coin. One side shows his face, the other shows yours. And just like that, he's gone again. You never quite walk with Hermes. You just try to keep up, still dazed from Hermes's whirlwind presence. You barely register. The world shifting again, less a transition, more a slippage. As if Olympus is folding in on itself. Light dims, color fades, and you realize you're descending not by stairs or slope, but by atmosphere alone. The air grows cooler, denser. You smell pomegranate and wet stone, and before you even see the gates, you know where you are. The underworld, not hell, not fire and pitchforks and eternal torment. That's someone else's mythology. Here, it's subtler, stranger, less repent or burn, and more account for yourself and take a number. At the edge of the realm, a river glides by black, glassy, and far too still. This is Styx, the river of oaths. Gods swear on it. Break your word here. And even Zeus can't help you. You spot a boat approaching, pushed forward by a skeletal figure cloaked in shadow Charon. The ferryman. He doesn't speak, just extends a bony hand. You remember Hermes's coin. You place it in his palm. The ferry moves, silently, and as you drift, a low thrum begins in your chest. It's not fear, it's recognition. You're approaching the court of Hades, god of the dead, ruler of the underworld, brother to Zeus and Poseidon, and perhaps the most misunderstood god in the pantheon. He doesn't greet you with flames or cruelty. In fact, he hardly seems to notice you. He's busy. Ruling the realm of the dead is a full-time job. After all, you can't wing it like Apollo with a sun chariot, or turn it into a party like Dionysus. This place runs on rules, and Hades, he enforces them. His throne room is vast but austere, carved from obsidian, lit by torches that never flicker. At his side sits Persephone, his queen goddess of spring, bringer of growth, and, ironically, half-year resident of the underworld. Fringe tidbit. While the popular myth paints Hades as the kidnapper of Persephone, many versions emphasize a more nuanced or even consensual arrangement. Some even suggest Persephone chose to eat the pomegranate seeds, knowing they would bind her to this realm. Historians still argue whether this reflects older fertility myths or patriarchal retellings that erased female agency. Either way, Persephone isn't wilting here. She's regal, steady, a seasonal queen whose gaze could crack marble. You kneel not from fear, but because everyone does. The dead, after all, don't get second chances. Hades doesn't punish. He simply remembers. Every lie, every kindness, every time you looked away, he speaks now, and his voice is quieter than you expect. Low, final, like a door closing gently behind you. Why are you here? He asks. You don't know. He does, but he lets you fumble for meaning. Because clarity is the currency of this place. You only leave once you understand why you came. Around you, shades drift through fields of asphodel bland. Endless meadows, where most souls end up. Not tortured, not rewarded, just remembered. Some go deeper to Tartarus, where the wicked are punished. Others ascend to the Elysian fields, where heroes lounge in eternal comfort. But most, Hades reminds you, are ordinary, flawed, forgotten by history, but not by him. He gestures to a golden book beside his throne. Names flicker across its pages, some in languages no one spoken in centuries. One of them looks like yours. Persephone speaks now, her voice like rainfall on stone. You can't leave anything behind until you know what it meant. You nod, unsure, and she places a seed in your hand. Crimson, smooth, heavy for its size. You'll carry this back, she says, not as burden, as memory. And with that, you're rising, not walking, not flying, just rising, as if Olympus is gently pulling you back toward the surface, like a breath returning to the lungs. You glance down once more. Hades isn't waving. It doesn't do farewells, but he's watching. And you feel the weight of the seed in your palm, and know he always will. You break the surface of Olympus, like a diver gasping for air. No splash, just light soft, filtered, like sunlight through ancient linen. Your feet touch marble again. And for a moment, you're alone with the memory of Persephone's seed still warm in your palm. But not for long, because a shadow flutters overhead, wide and shimmering, followed by a gust of wind that smells like fresh scrolls, owl feathers, and unresolved debates. A woman descends in silence, her robes stitched with storm clouds, her eyes lit with questions that haven't been invented yet. She doesn't land so much as arrive. You recognize her instantly. Athena, goddess of wisdom, strategy, crafts, and, oh yes, war, but not Ares-style blood and chaos war. Athena is the chessboard, the general's plan, the moment you don't swing your sword because you see a better move. She's cool, composed, and alarmingly still. You feel like she's already assessed your motives, your posture, your childhood traumas, and whether you floss regularly. And the worst part, she's probably right. Athena was born in full armor, leaping from Zeus's skull after he swallowed her pregnant mother. Metis, the goddess of cunning. Fringe tidbit. The name Metis literally means wisdom. So, yeah, Zeus tried to digest intellect itself. Didn't work. Now Athena stands as a paradox, a goddess of war who despises waste. A virgin deity, worshipped in a city famed for art and politics, and a symbol of reason in a pantheon known for impulse. Historians still argue whether Athena represents patriarchal idealization of female intellect strong, but asexual, or, if she embodies older, pre-Olympian earth goddess traits absorbed into the Greek structure. Either way, her complexity is part of her power. She walks beside you now, silent for a while. You expect a lecture. Instead, she hands you a spindle and a scrap of fabric. Thought is not enough, she says. You must weave. She leads you into a gallery lined with tapestries, each one depicting a different myth. Gods battling titans. Heroes tricking fate. Arachne, yes. That Arachne challenging Athena to a weaving contest and getting turned into a spider for her pride. Athena's version of constructive feedback. But one tapestry catches your eye. It shows a mortal, not named. Not heroic, simply walking through Olympus. Meeting gods. Listening. Learning. Holding a seed in their hand. Athena watches your reaction. Doesn't smile. Doesn't gloat. Just nods. She points to a blank panel at the edge of the room. Yours, she says, when you're ready. Then, almost as an afterthought, she adds, the wise don't just survive stories. They continue them. And then, in a swirl of feathers and logic, she's gone. The air is still. You turn back to the tapestry. The spindle. The fabric. Your hands aren't sure yet, but they remember. You sit, thread your needle, and begin. Because if Hades taught you to remember, and Hermes showed you how to move, and Hestia made you feel safe, Athena now demands you do something with it. You don't have to be divine. You just have to be deliberate. A single stitch, a single line of thought, a moment of clarity in a world addicted to noise. You don't finish. Not yet, but you start. And that's enough. The loom fades behind you, as if it had only existed for the moment you needed it. Your fingers still carry the phantom twitch of thread between them. Your eyes feel wider now, less dazzled, more grounded. Olympus isn't loud anymore. It's quiet, not because the gods are gone, but because you've started listening differently. You walk a while, though you no longer question direction. The path opens of its own accord. Then, almost predictably, it splits in two. One way leads to shining stairs that vanish into misty brilliance. The other slopes gently downward toward what looks like a meadow or a ruin. Maybe something old, humble. Naturally, you pick the ruin. At the bottom of the slope, beneath a broken arch and vines thick with time, sits a figure. He's older than the others, much older. His beard coils like vines themselves, and his robe looks like it was stitched from cave paintings and mountain moss. He doesn't get up. He doesn't need to. You found Cronus. Yes, that Cronus, Titan of time, father of Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Demeter, and Hestia, the one who swallowed his children whole to keep them from overthrowing him, then lost anyway, when Zeus tricked him and sliced open his belly. It's not exactly the Hallmark dad story. And yet, here he is now. Not monstrous, just tired. He's not part of the official Olympus crowd anymore. After the Titanomachy, the war of gods versus titans, he was dethroned. In some stories, imprisoned. In others, exiled to the edges of the world. And in a few, oddly peaceful versions, he rules a golden age of bliss in the afterlife. Historians still argue whether Cronus was originally a harvest deity or a representation of time's cruelty, later turned sinister by Olympian propaganda. Either way, he's complicated, both creator and destroyer. A god whose hunger was literal and metaphorical. Fringe tidbit: the Romans turned him into Saturn, a gentler figure, presiding over agriculture and abundance. During Saturnalia, role reversed. Slaves dined like masters, and society briefly turned upside down. Not bad for a guy who once ate his family. Cronus watches you now. His eyes like tree rings deep with years and indifferent to judgment. You sit beside him. He doesn't speak, but the silence says plenty. Time, after all, isn't loud. It's relentless. It erodes mountains. It hollows gods. It makes mortals ache with the weight of memory and the fear of forgetting. You look at your reflection in a pool near his feet. You've changed. Not visibly, but you're not the same you who walked into Olympus. You've learned things. Not just divine gossip or flashy myths, but patterns, warnings, invitations. Cronus drops something into your lap. A stone. Smooth. Heavy. Familiar. It looks like the one Rhea tricked him into swallowing instead of baby Zeus. Ah, decoy. A placeholder. A pause in the cycle. You realize it's your choice now. The gods, they're timeless. But you get one thread, one journey. And while you've wandered among immortals, you're the story that ends, or begins again. You stand? Cronus nods, not approval, not affection, just acknowledgement. A mortal, brave enough to witness the divine and walk away intact. You place the stone in your pocket, not to forget, to remember what not to repeat. The path back curls upward now. Your steps are slower, because endings deserve intention. You ascend the final stretch, feet brushing marble, warmed by a sun that doesn't burn anymore. Olympus, that chaotic swirl of thunder, laughter, wine, war, riddles, and rules, recedes behind you, not vanishing, just softening, like a dream that lingers in the sheets long after you've woken. There is no grand gate at the exit, no trumpet blast, just a threshold. And waiting at that threshold, impossibly still, impossibly present, is Gaia, Mother Earth, not goddess of something, goddess of everything. She predates the Titans, predates the Olympians, predates time. Even Gaia was there when the cosmos cracked its first yawn and stretched itself into being. She is not adorned in silks. She wears moss, dust, root, stone. Her skin is veined with rivers and streaked with the colors of dusk. Her eyes are not wise. They are older than the idea of wisdom. She doesn't speak. She waits. And you, mortal thing, approach her like a question. All this time, you've wandered through gods who rule love and death, wine and war, law and trickery. But Gaia, she doesn't rule. She hosts. She holds. Fanget tilbit even Zeus, mighty thunder wielder, sought her advice. When Olympus trembled, Gaia didn't scream, she shifted. When wars ended, it was her soil that buried the dead and grew their stories into forests. Historians still argue whether Gaia's worship was more spiritual or agricultural, matriarchal or merely symbolic. But the truth is, she was never fully explainable. You don't worship the ground beneath your feet. You need it. You trust it. You return to it. You realize now your journey has never really been through Olympus. It's been through you, reflected in gods, like cracked mirrors, flawed, magnified, sharpened by myth. Zeus's power, Hera's pride, Athena's clarity, Dionysus's freedom, Hermes's motion, Hades' memory, Hestia's quiet, Artemis's wildness, Cronus's regret. Each one handed you a piece, a thread, a stone, a seed. Gaia gestures to the ground beside her. You kneel, plant the pomegranate seed Persephone gave you, the stone from Cronus beside it, the thread from Athena wrapped around the stem. You water it with memory. You cover it with a whisper, and Gaia places her hand over yours. There is no flash of light, no hymn, only rooting. What you've carried wasn't burden. It was beginning, and as you stand, Gaia finally speaks not aloud, but within. You may go now, but you won't be the same. And you believe her. You step forward, not out of Olympus, but into yourself, where myth and memory become one soft, sleeping breath. So now, the gods fade gently behind your eyes, like distant constellations dimming at dawn. The chaos of Olympus is far away now, tucked neatly behind soft clouds and marble columns. You've walked beside thunder and fire, wine and wisdom, and somehow, you're still standing still, but layered now, a little Keter, a little older in the soul. Your heartbeat has slowed. Your breath moves like tidewater, in and out, steady as an oar, cutting through ancient seas. The echoes of Zeus's throne and Apollo's song dissolve into a hush. Even Hermes has stopped sprinting. Even Ares has set down his spear. The myths, they were never about gods. They were always about you, your decisions, your dreams, your moments of fear and stubbornness and impossible grace, the ways you love, the ways you lose, the quiet things you carry when no one sees you. Now, as you sink deeper into your pillow, let the laurel leaf fall from your hand. Let the spindle slip to the floor. Let the seed grow quietly in the soil of your mind. There's no more story tonight. No more riddles. You don't have to journey anymore. You've earned your stillness. Let the gods rest. Let your thoughts soften. You are safe. You are home, and everything you met in Olympus is already within you. Sleep well. Dream gently. And remember, you were always divine. Sweet dreams.